You're welcome back. Now, the government has faced some resistance in its quest to replace the power distribution services as the concessionaire in the distribution sector of our power supply chain. Now, the concession agreement with the company was, well, according to a letter that we've read, is to be terminated after its demand guarantees did not check out. Now, in the move to replace them in a timely manner, the government has told its U.S. partners that they will prefer a restricted tender process. The decision, however, remains the prerogative of the U.S. partners, Millennium Challenge Corporation, and the opposition NDC has also warned government against entering another concession agreement without going through due diligence. We're going to talk about this and all related issues. We're very happy to have with us this morning. He's in charge of public relations at the Energy Ministry, Nana Damoah. Also here with us this morning is a procurement consultant and the council chairman of the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply. I'm talking, of course, about Mr. Basil Ahiable. Gentlemen, how nice to see you both. Thank you very much for making the time to be with us.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Right. Now, I think the first thing we can do to benefit our audience is to clarify a few of the things that perhaps are not quite understood by everyone. So we've seen the letter from the finance minister. Can you help us understand, Nana? First of all, has the PDS contract been cancelled?
Government has communicated a decision to terminate the concession to the Millennium Challenge Corporation.
Okay, but the termination has not yet happened.
So this is what it is. We've signed a concession, which in effect is a contract. Now, the contract has several clauses that determines what should happen under what circumstances. Ordinarily, you call this due process. So, as part of the due process, the government of Ghana has made a clear decision that we terminate this concession with PDS. Again, a bit of technicality, so I'd urge you to give me a bit of latitude to be able to explain. What we mean by the termination of the concession with PDS is not that we do not want the entire compact or the concession agreement again. No. What we have a problem with is with the organization known as PDS, which we have made a decision to terminate. Now, the Millennium Challenge Corporation is the one giving us the funds for this whole compact. This compact was signed between the government of Ghana on one hand and the Millennium Challenge Corporation on the other. So if government has made a decision to terminate, we need to inform the Millennium Challenge Corporation. This morning, I'm sure that you've seen another letter making the rounds. Now, that letter was written first before the finance minister also replied.
Right.
Now, so the letter of the finance minister was in response to that letter that was first written by the Millennium Challenge Corporation. The Millennium Challenge Corporation held the view that we should go forward with PDS and stated other conditions that they wanted us to follow. The government of Ghana has communicated our decision to them that no, this is terminated and we have counter proposals that we have made. So now we need to get to that common middle ground point and then move on from there.
Okay, now there's something I would like you to help us understand regarding the letter from Millennium, from the MCC. But before we get to that, I still haven't really got the definitive answer to my question. So forgive me for pushing, but I would like to have a clear answer here. There is a difference between a decision and an action. So you've made it clear that government has made a decision that the contract will be terminated. I want to know whether the action has been taken.
So like I said, there's a process. So that's why I explained that whole arena of a contract and a concession and due process.
Right.
So government has made that decision and the due process is being followed.
Okay. All right. So there is now a process to terminate the contract.
The concession itself is like a contract, let me put it that way. And it spells out what you can do and cannot do, what should be done at any particular point in time. That is why government could not, at the beginning, when we suspected that there was something wrong, we decided to go through suspension, because at that point, when you looked at it clearly, we had to find a way to, protect the assets of the state. But we could not outrightly terminate. but there was a clause in there that allowed for suspension. I've seen a headline that government terminates concession agreement with PDS that you've already stated on your website. I think that's a bit not so...
Not accurate, because
yes, that's not very accurate. The headline...
The agreement is not yet terminated.
Well,
you are going through a process.
What I'm saying is that there's a process and government is following that process.
Yes, so you have not yet terminated it.
There's a process and government is following that process. I can understand why you are asking for a direct answer in those issues.
But and I can't understand why you can't give us a direct answer.
You need to understand that there is a whole ambit. It's a complete situation. And I need to be mindful of the completeness of the situation. That is why I am hesitant to give you what you are looking for.
So today, when I pay my electricity bill, the receipt I will get, is it from PDS or ECG?
I'd be very happy for you to do that, and then you can tell from a journalistic point of view.
I mean, you are the...
I agree with you.
You are the public relations officer.
You're looking for me to give you a direct answer.
For the energy ministry.
Yes,
is it that you don't know the answer, Nana?
No, I'm saying that I'll be very happy from a journalistic point of view. Now, listen.
Oh yes, we will do that.
You also need to.
We must ask you what the situation is.
You also need to appreciate the fact that from where I sit, whatever I say carries some official weight, which may affect the process that is going on. Right. Which is why I'm hesitant to speak.
You can't directly tell me what my receipt will say.
I haven't said that. What I'm saying is that from a journalistic point of view, you can do that and put out your view.
But you can't say.
I'm saying that from where I sit, what I say carries some authority and weight, which may affect the process. And I do not want to put ourselves in that situation.
This is amazing, I've got to say. This is a very, very fascinating situation we find ourselves in. Now, the other thing I would like to clarify before we bring in Mr. Ahiable is the issue of the letter. Now, you've stated that the letter from the MCC was written first, and then the finance minister's letter was a response to the letter from the MCC.
Yes.
Even though they both have the same, the dates is the same day, if I'm right. So what you're saying is that the finance minister received this letter from MCC on that day, read it, and then wrote the 7-page response, same day, 9-page, thank you, same day.
If you read the finance minister's letter, he states accurately that the government of Ghana would have wanted to engage in broader consultations before, and so requested up to the 21st of October, but the response came that we needed to respond to it by midnight of the same date, and that spells out the situation.
Right. No, so I just want to clarify the timeline here. The finance minister wrote in response to the MCC letter that we have now seen.
Brief tells me, yes.
All right, very good. So what this means is, following the meetings, I know that the finance minister and the executive secretary of the president were at meetings, and other officials were at meetings with MCC in the United States for over a period of 3 days. Following those meetings, the MCC wrote this letter. Finance minister then responded. Now, the MCC's letter is spelling out certain steps that they expect government of Ghana to follow. Does that mean that the conclusion of the meeting was that the government of Ghana would follow these steps? Is that why MCC wrote that letter?
If you consider the Minister of Finance's letter, he disputes the content of that letter as an agreement. So I think that we as Ghanaians would want to stand by the Minister of Finance in saying that the Minister of Finance reiterated that the decisions or the content of the letter that have been brought to him, to the best of his understanding, was not
the agreements that they made,
or the agreements that were reached.
But you realize that these are diametrically opposed positions here. The MCC is saying that following our meeting, you will now go and reinstate PDS. Government of Ghana is saying that following our meeting, we will now go and terminate PDS. So these are diametrically opposed. How can people meet, come out of a meeting, and have two diametrically opposed understandings of what they agreed?
what you need to understand is that the government of Ghana has always acted with dispatch to protect the interest of, first of all, the people, and secondly, the Republic of Ghana. So in everything that is being done, you can see clearly from the tone and the content of the letter of the finance minister that we are seeking to protect the assets of the country and then also the interests of the people of this country. The Millennium Challenge Corporation, I mean, it's fair to assume that they are also interested in protecting their interest as well. You might want to therefore keep in mind that from the play that you have seen so far, it's a bit of a fluid situation. It's a bit of a crisis management situation that is happening. But you can be sure that the government of Ghana will always act with dispatch to protect the interests of the people of Ghana.
Did MCC agree with government of Ghana in these meetings that the PDS contract will be terminated?
That is the position of the government of Ghana.
So MCC agreed and then wrote a letter that said the complete opposite.
You're pushing me into
of
an
what
arena.
They agreed. You are the spokesperson here.
But you are pushing me into an arena where you are expecting me to make comments that affect our international relations, among others. What I am going to say, it's serious. I mean, let's admit it.
I think already our international relations are not really going very well. We have two opposite positions here.
What I want to make clear is that our position is what has been reiterated by the finance minister, that our understanding following that meeting was what the finance minister has stated. Okay. I will not sit here and seek or purport to think or reason for the MCC. What we know is that the finance minister and the representatives of the government of Ghana clearly understood a situation, and upon receipt of the letter, we have sought to communicate that understanding that we had, which is basically a reflection of the interest of the people of Ghana to the MCC.
So in the meeting, MCC agreed that PDS will be terminated.
That is the understanding of the Ghanaian side.
Interesting. All right, Mr. Ahiable, this is
fluid.
Yes, fluid is a big understatement here.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your being here, and of course we hope to benefit from your expertise. Okay, government of Ghana wants to. They say they want to act in the interest of the people of Ghana. Therefore,
not that we say,
they want to terminate.
If I may, it's not that we say we want to.
Is that not what you are saying?
No, I'm saying that government has always acted in protecting.
That's what you're saying, is it not?
We say we want to.
But that's what you are saying. That the decision you are taking, you want to take it in the interest of the people of Ghana. Is that not what you are saying?
I can couch it in a more concise way.
You want to couch what I'm saying?
What I have said. Right. I want to represent what I have said in a more concise manner.
All I said was, this is what you are saying.
Which is that government has always acted with dispatch to protect the interest of the Republic of Ghana.
So the
people of Ghana can count on the government of Ghana
to always act to protect the government of Ghana wants to take.
It's in the interest of the Republic of Ghana.
That's what I said, Nana. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Ahiable, from your perspective, is a decision to terminate PDS, replace PDS with a new concessionaire, in light of all that has been uncovered, is this in the interest of Ghana?
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers. I think even the difficulty in explaining the position of government at this stage give credence to the fact that we have a voidable contract on hand. The procurement process itself has been questioned. Some organizations, some bodies have come out, including even Parliament, I mean the minority, to raise the red flag that we are heading towards doom, and for that matter, we have to take a second look at this PDS saga. If you look at the letter the finance minister wrote, giving notice of termination as we understand it now, you realize that there has been a perpetuation of alleged fraud and also gross negligence of duty on the part of those who are supposed to keep the gates for this country. Mind you, we have a little over $3 billion asset, going in for a little over $1 billion. What is the position of government? For me, from the procurement side, a lot of issues are questionable, and we have to be very careful. We don't throw this important asset, no mean an asset like an energy sector, which has to propel the development of this country, to some people who do not even have any idea about how to run this thing, and also even the capital to infuse. For me, it is very clear that government terminates, irrespective of whoever is going to give us the 400 and something million dollars, because we are worse off if we should lose this national asset. Mind you, if we don't give this asset to a proper organization or an SPV, we will have these properties deteriorating over the years. And by the time we take over, I can bet you, Kojo, that you'll be having an asset that will be less than even $1 billion. Who pays for it? And if you look at the contract, and if you look at what has been put in it, people are trying to run away from vicarious liability. People are trying to insulate themselves from by forming SPVs here and there. These
Shell
are
companies.
acrobatics that are geared towards siphoning and openly taking the assets of this nation for some few greedy persons. Let's take our time. Let's tread cautiously. Let's make sure we go through a process that will give us a very genuine SPV to run this. We agree that the ECG needs some capital infusion. No doubt. Do we have the money? If we don't, then some of these concessionaire agreements are the best we can have. But then, at the end of the day, let's be sure that the procurement process is very clear, it's religious, and it gives out the people or a team that can effectively manage this. I'm all for the termination.
Okay, so you believe that that would actually be in the interest of the people of Ghana. Now, the proposal that we've seen in the letter from the finance minister is that the PDS would be replaced through a restrictive tender process. The deadline is 31st of December, really. So this is what the government wants to do in order to be able to replace PDS by that deadline. Are there any risks to that process?
Fortunately, we have a procurement law, Accesses 3, 203, amended 2016, Act 419. It's very clear. Sorry, 914. It's very clear on under what condition a restricted tender can go on. With your permission, I can read.
Certainly.
Section 38 of the Act says that a procurement entity may, for reasons of economy and efficiency, these are the two key words, nothing with timelines, and subject to the approval of the PPA board, may engage in procurement by means of restricted tendering if the specialized nature of the goods and works or service are available from a limited number of suppliers or contractors. Key word here is limited. So we ask ourselves, do we have limited number of suppliers in the system all around the world? That is the situation. If we're talking about restricted, it means you want to avoid international competitive bidding. But the law says that open tendering is the default method, and even less than $1 million, a little below $1 million, has to go international competitive bidding. But of course, we have the provisions for the restricted tendering. The first is that there should be a limited number of contractors and suppliers on the market for this assignment. Is that what we have? B, if time and cost required for examining and evaluating large number of tenders is disproportionate to the value of the goods. For example, you want to buy an item for, say, 200,000 Ghana cedis. You go open or national or international. Common sense tells you that even the cost and the time you spend in evaluating may not be sensible. It will be disproportionate to the value of the item. Here we ask ourselves, is the value that small? We are talking about 1 billion spent, category spent. So if you put these two together, it tells you straight away that going restricted tender, you may have to even amend the law.
And these are the only two conditions.
The third condition, please. The third condition that the amended act gives is that if an offer for competitive tendering fails to receive any response after publication, you ask ourselves, did we publicize it? Yes, we did. Didn't we get responses? We got. The problem now is it's not the fact that we didn't get responses. We are at where we are because of some issues that came up, including fraud, which our energy minister has boldly mentioned.
But this is all well and good. I mean, but laws are made for man, not man for the law, as we often quote. So we have a real situation here where 31st is the deadline. Is it practical for the default means of procurement, which is international competitive tender, to be used?
That is why I'm saying that we shouldn't use the exigency of time.
But is it practical? Yes, we may say we want to obey the law, but will we succeed?
It is not. But the question remains that, do we have to? If you are hungry, it's not anything that you eat. So if we have this problem, and instead of taking our time to go through the due process and close those gaps that we have experienced previously, you cannot say that because of time, because of the compact, the amount the U.S. government will be giving us, we should plunge ourselves into a bigger problem.
So what you would suggest is that government should say, you know what, if MCC is not willing to give us that money, we don't care. We're going to take our time and find a concessionaire using the international competitive tender process, which is supposed to be the default in this situation. So that's your recommendation.
Let me also add it. We can prevail on the U.S. government to extend the time for us, because we need to do due diligence.
Let's assume they refuse to, because I've read this letter. The tone of this letter.
We did international competitive bidding earlier on, and this is where we are, because from within we had people who would not obey the laws or the provisions of the contract, downgrading guarantees here and there. That is what has brought us here. For this time, I think we have to take our time, do a due diligence, and make sure that whoever we give this contract or concession to is a company or a PDS or is an SPV that can really manage these assets and even benefit.
And has the financial muscle to do so.
Has the financial muscle.
So to clarify, because I've read the tone of this letter from MCC, they don't sound like they are in a negotiating mood. I may be wrong, but that's the tone I'm picking up from reading it. So what I'm asking for clarity is that, should government take the position that, well, we'll ask for an extension. If it doesn't come, we are willing to forego the $500 million and take our time and do international competitive
we are better off saving our over 3 billion assets than to rush in for $500 million. That will land us into a bigger problem.
So that would be your recommendation. All right. Well, Nana, let's talk about the proposal put forward by the finance minister. Why not ask for some more time
on what he says?
Sure.
I listened intently to his reading of the Act 663 and the interpretation so given. I happen to have heard him say that for reasons of efficiency and economy, and I would leave it to the lawyers to give a definition of what's efficiency therein would mean, and as to whether it would fit within the current situation or otherwise, and also economy as well, because you may want to avert your mind to the fact that laws are written in such a manner that, as well, and as much as it's often the norm to be verbose, you also want to use words like efficiency and economy that give room for interpretation. So I tend to want to disagree with his interpretation of those two words as were given by stating that it does not allow us to undergo restricted tendering under the current situation. For want of a better word, perhaps we may need to test the law on this, but I believe that those two words lets the current situation fall flatly into the square box that has been provided in Act 663.
Okay, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, because what the law does is that it gives those two preconditions of efficiency and economy, and then it goes further to state the two specific circumstances under which you can do it. Okay, so it says, first of all, yes, it should be for efficiency and economy, but even where efficiency and economy has been, determined, these are the two conditions under which you can go ahead.
Actually, with the amendment of Act 914, I believe, it gives a third condition. But what you may also want to even...
so the three conditions,
yes, but then what you might also want to avert your mind to even is that how many companies in Ghana today have experience when it comes to electricity distribution in this country? Take out ECG, take out NETCO. No other company has experience in Ghana today when it comes to electricity distribution.
Yeah, but PDS came along. It didn't have, I mean, the Ghanaian component of it didn't have experience, but
So
it qualified.
So the point I'm trying to make there, however, is that when we speak of restricted tendering, perhaps what we might want to do, instead of ruling out that it doesn't fall within the space required for restricted tendering, is to wait to see the parameters that will be given for the restricted tendering, rather than to outrightly dismiss it, that it is impossible and it may be an illegality.
Why was the first option not to ask for more time?
Because, as you have clearly stated, we have already signed a concession that has timelines, and it doesn't appear that we would make any grounds in seeking for more time.
Why do you say that?
You've clearly identified that from your own reading, and this is without my saying, but from your own reading of the content of the letter, it doesn't appear that it's a negotiable item for us. And as a country, as I have said, government would always act in the best interest of the Republic of Ghana.
Is government willing to forego the $500 million?
I believe that when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. It doesn't lie within my authority to make that statement, but I believe that when we get there, we'll cross it.
But I think we're there. MCC is asking government to do one thing. Government is proposing to do something else.
Government has given
so we
a
are there.
Proposal. No, government has given a counter proposal. I believe that the MCC will respond that, well, we find your proposals acceptable, or we disagree with your proposals. When it gets there, then we are there.
So at the meeting, what did they discuss? If we are now having proposals and counter proposals,
may I state that from our point, and I would want every Ghanaian to stand behind us and the government officials at this point, that from our standpoint of view, looking at the Ghanaian interest, this is our understanding of what has happened. We have communicated so in very clear and certain terms. We await the response from there, and then we'll carry the entire nation along. If it gets to that point where we need to make those decisions, I believe that the right communication will be given to the people of Ghana, and we'll take it from there. Remember that we are doing all of this keeping in mind the other considerations at stake. For example, there's Compact 3, which is also at stake. If we are not able to successfully complete Compact 2, then it may have implications for us for Compact 3. And why is Compact 3 necessary? We've had a lot of discussions recently about take-or-pay and excess power and what it cost us. You might want to remind yourself of the fact that we are paying about $500 million every year because of excess capacity payments that we have to make. If Compact 3 does come on, essentially it will enable government tap into a wider market within West Africa to evacuate the power that we have, which we are paying for but not using. And this would help reduce the debt burden on the people of Ghana. So government is taking into consideration all of these things in determining the steps that we are taking. What I would want to greatly repeat and hinge and let it get to every Ghanaian is that all the decisions that government is making, it is taking into consideration all of these other things that may not necessarily be on the table at the current moment, but with the foresight and hindsight will come into play based on the decisions that we are making. We just need every Ghanaian to understand that government is making these decisions with the best interest of the people of Ghana at heart.
So basically, the letter that the finance minister wrote is a counter proposal. Those were your words.
Well, I'm saying that a meeting was held. The MCC says this was our understanding. Government has gone ahead to say no, this wasn't our understanding. This was our understanding. And even to further actualize their understanding, these are some other proposals that we are making that will help reach the ends that we have desired. So essentially, we repeated our understanding of what the meeting was and went ahead to give further details of how it can be actualized. And this is what has been presented to the MCC.
So, will government terminate the PDS contract even if MCC does not approve?
You have asked me this question, and you've come back to ask it in another way. What I have
so maybe you'll answer this time.
What I have said is that when we get to that bridge, it does not lie within my mouth at this current moment. To say
No, we are at that bit.
No, I disagree with you, and I'm saying again, and Kojo, it's very easy.
So when will we get there? 31st?
It's very easy for us to get into a tunnel vision when there's a subject at hand. But I have sought to, in this very discussion, remind you that there are other elements at play that may not necessarily be on the table, that you and I may not be considering at this current moment, but may also be may also be spin-offs of whatever decision that government is making. So it doesn't lie within my mouth to state that this is what government to do or what government to do. Where we are now, government has given its decision and its proposals to our partners. We await the comment or the response of our partners.
So there is a possibility that the PDS contract will not be terminated?
I haven't said that. What I'm saying,
I'm asking you. I'm not saying that's what you said. I'm asking you.
What I'm saying
is there a possibility that the PDS contract will not be terminated?
What I'm saying is that when we get to that point of a response can go one of two ways in my mind. One, okay, we accept your proposals. You can go forward, maybe with some variations in the subsequent proposals moving forward. Or no, we do not accept your proposals. We de-obligate the $190 million, and subsequently you cannot qualify for Compact 3. When we get to that point, that is where government would be faced with the issue of, do we still go ahead? And again, even just talking to you, there's a third option, which may be that, okay, we do not accept, but we're giving you up to this time to communicate back to us whether you accept our terms or otherwise. So when we get to that point, that decision would come.
So 3 possible outcomes.
In my mind.
And government has not decided yet on what they will do.
No. That is above my level. That's what I'm seeking to say.
So the decision has been made, but I
cannot speak to that.
As the spokesperson of the Energy Ministry, cannot tell me what the decision will be.
Yes, at that level.
Which means there is a possibility that the PDS contract may not end up being cancelled.
That's an inference that you are making.
Okay, but not one that you are making.
It hasn't come from me.
I see. All right. Now, Nana, there's something I'm curious about just before Mr. Hiable comes back in. Something I'm curious about. Now, you know when I asked earlier, if I go and pay my bill today, will it say PDS on the receipt? And you couldn't answer that question. But before this letter came to light, let's say if I had paid my bill on Monday, last week Monday, it would have said PDS, right? Okay.
Most likely. But again, you need to also understand that
even though hasn't come yet.
I'm just saying that even though it would have said PDS, PDS was acting under the license of ECG. We need to get that in
acting
place.
Under what?
Under the ECG license. Remember that the concession was suspended.
Yes.
The assets were handed over to ECG. But there was this issue of the workforce that had already been handed over to PDS, over 6,000 workers, which therefore raised the practical issue of we haven't gotten to the point of termination. It's a suspension. So it's impractical to say that all the workers should revert to ECG because then we've reached the point of termination. So PDS were allowed to work, but with their license suspended. So under ECG, I don't know if you understand that.
I really don't. I want to understand how one company can work under the license of another.
So, but Kojo, you are a newsman. You are aware that after the suspension, ECG signed a contract with PDS. You are aware of this?
ECG signed a contract with PDS, to do what?
To continue with the sales and perform some other functions on behalf of ECG.
Without license?
Well, so let's say it is a subcontract, and again, keeping in mind that we have viewers, let's say it's a subcontractual agreement. Let's put it that way.
I don't understand that either. You can't subcontract a company to come and operate in an area where you need a license to operate.
So
and the company doesn't have a license.
I have a dental license. I own a dental facility. I've employed other persons to work as cleaners, to work as nurses, to work as assistants. Is that problematic?
So is that what happened? You, ECG employed PDS to come and do work that does not require license?
They subcontracted. Now, again,
they subcontracted them to do what?
They subcontracted them to do various portions of the work that ECG, due to its lack of workforce at that material point in time, could not do. Now,
and listen, the work that they were subcontracted to do, are you telling us that they do not require a license to do that work?
The license of ECG, which gives ECG the power to do that work, covers it. We can litigate over this, but
I'd rather not. I'd rather be clear.
So the clarity.
So help me understand.
Kojo,
ECG subcontracted an unlicensed company.
No, Kojo,
to work in the
Kojo,
power distribution.
No, that is taking
sector?
that is stretching the analogy. What I'm telling you is,
not an analogy. Let
me give you a very simple analogy. I am a medical doctor. I have a medical license. I have a medical facility. And my license covers the operation of that medical facility.
Right.
I am an individual. I have contracted other persons to perform various functions that are needed in that medical facility. So I've employed nurses, I've employed cooks, and all of these persons come together to make sure that my medical facility is working as a medical facility. You understand? In this case, let's say that ECG then is the doctor. There are various other functions like sales, like other functions that should be done. That ECG has then gone ahead to say, I have subcontracted this company to perform those functions for me. But the top of the line item, which is that needs the license, so that various regulatory functions are performed, is carried by me, which is ECG.
So what was this? So I was using the example of last Monday. As at last Monday, what was ECG doing? What was PDS doing?
Could you again? This was meant to be an explanation of a bigger line item. So if you let me go back to that bigger line item.
I want the explanation to be clear.
And I've given it to you.
Not just me, but the audience.
It's a very simple analogy that I believe that
you cancelled somebody's license. Then you brought them back to work as a subcontractor.
It wasn't basically the license.
Suspended, sorry,
yes,
not
it was
cancelled.
Suspended. It wasn't cancelled.
You suspended somebody's license, so the person was not licensed. Then you brought them back to come and do the work that you've suspended their license for.
No,
but you want
they didn't come back to do the work that they came back to do parts
different
of that
work.
Parts, some bits of that work.
Which bits?
So, for example, let's constrain ourselves to the sales. All right? Now, again, like I have said, government has always acted to protect the interest of the people of Ghana. So, for example, contractually, we have handed over the workforce of ECG to PDS. We haven't terminated the agreement, though we have suspended the agreement. ECG, therefore, is left to the workforce of about 200 people, which cannot do the work that they need. PDS, however, is left with a 6,000 workforce that, due to the suspension of their license, is not at play anymore. We therefore took a very practical decision that, you know what, you have the workforce, you have the technical expertise, you have everything sitting there. So come and work in some aspect of it for ECG so we can keep the lights on. And really, let's be factual. The lights through all these difficulties have remained on. If not, what we're going to do was walk into a gray area where we're going to be forced, as a result of the workforce, to terminate and then incur other things that may arise, as a perhaps judgment.
But just to be clear, until this until this contract is terminated, the company that is providing the service to Ghanaians is not licensed to do so. PDS is not licensed to do so.
That's not true. ECG is the license holder.
All right.
PDS is working for ECG, not in the full capacity. Hold on. Not in the full capacity that requires a license, because the license holder is ECG. Some portions of the work that does not necessarily require a license have been given to PDS for them to do.
Thankfully, Mr.
And if you give me some time here, like I was saying, I brought that in as an example to make a point that contractual obligations sometimes put us in a certain strait that we need to, be very mindful of how we proceed moving forward. So in all of this big example, what you and I assets of Ghana, 3 billion from this entire thing, and hand it over to the ECG, which is a state company anyway, protecting that asset. We then took steps further to investigate more and come out with concrete findings. Why? We couldn't have, per the agreement that we signed, gone ahead to outrightly terminate.
And I'll have to rush you a bit, okay? You are sort of going over details that we already understand. But thanks for that. Before Mr. Hiable comes in, I'll read a couple of your messages, just a few of them, and then Mr. Hiable will get your reaction to what we've heard so far. All right, so this is a message from Citizen Not Spectator, who writes from Accra. He says, for the PDS scandal, we Ghanaians are no more fools. We heard so many publications on this monumental fraudulent deal that some government officials have engaged in this act where WhatsApp groups were created to deal with shareholdings, but our president and his sister Chief Justice says nothing but let a poor person drive on the shoulder of a bad road and you will see him charged the next day. The justice, I always say, is in the shrines, not in any court in Ghana. I see doom for Ghana. Okay. Thanks for writing in. Let's read this one. Do we still have the firing squad? Just send the corrupt officials there and they will all be yelling the truth. PDS crisis. MEDA forged PURC and Energy Commission letterheads to secure deal. Is that true? I don't think so. Let me read this one. It's a shame how government is lying day in, day out on this PDS saga. What interest does government have in restructuring the shareholders' capacity in the deal, if indeed they had nothing to do with the fraud? The finance minister has questions to answer. This indeed is the biggest scandal that has ever hit the country. This is from Abdul Ghaffar Amusa Mensa. He writes from Cape Coast. Let me read maybe two more. This one simply says, why are they terminating the contract, please? There's no name with that one. But I'm sure if you've been watching, you now know why government is giving notice of termination. This one says, we're just fortunate to be prompted by the aggrieved parties of this corrupt administration. Heads must roll. They must focus on a sponsorship package which can cut across grassroots. Oh, well, this is about football. Okay, but that's a message from Banga in Kokumlimle. Last one here, and this is from Bunti Benjamin. He writes from Achime Buakwa, and he says, I don't get the head and tail of the NDC's talk on the PDS saga. Is it that they don't understand the issue right from the start, or they just want to be heard by pushing for people's resignation when it took the same people's vigilance to uncover the PDS wrongs? Let's put Ghana in all our doings. Thank you all for those messages. If we get the chance, we'll read a few more later. But Mr. Hiable, I need to hear from you. Yes, by the way, once you're done, we'll talk about the NDC's concerns that they have also raised recently. But your reaction to
yes. Interesting. First, to go back on my insistence that the restricted tender will not be founded in law. Apart from, maybe if there are other reasons, apart from what we have from the minister's write-up, my understanding is that they will be resorting to restricted tendering because of time.
Okay. Yes,
Because
that is
of
what the finance minister suggested
Because
in
of
his
time,
letter.
which is not.
But may I make a small correction?
Nana, please permit Mr. Hiable to make his point. You have an opportunity.
If
to speak
you
after
agree with
this.
me that the overriding factor is the fact that we need to meet a timeline, it's not provided in the law. The law talks about efficiency and economy, unless of course there are other reasons that.
What does efficiency mean?
You tell me.
If you can stay on your point, Nana will have an opportunity to make his later.
That is it. You see, for me, it's part of the acrobatics. Let's be very clear in our minds. And as a professional, what I try to say is that there have been so many infringements during the procurement process, and even the integrity of the people who were supposed to keep the gates for us. Let's take our time, sit back, and take it under Section 24 of the Act. Do due diligence, do a very good pre-qualification to make sure that anybody, any firm that is coming on board has what it takes.
Okay, you've made that point. So let's have a reaction to the rest of what Nana has said. No, let's have a reaction from you to the rest of what Nana has said. Because he's talked about many other things, not just the restricted tender. I asked him about ECG's use of PDS.
That's what I describe as acrobatics, because if you need to have PDS as a subcontractor to ECG just because the main concession agreement has been suspended, it doesn't fly. What I'm pleading for is that we've made the mistakes. It's not too late. Let's get extension of time from the US government. Let's sit back. Let's get men.
Why does it not fly? Nana's explanation is that ECG has a license. They needed the staff. PDS has the staff. So they simply recruited the staff to do the job.
So the understanding is that the concession was suspended and it's still suspended, isn't it?
And the assets are no longer in the hands of PDS.
Have you cited that contract or that subcontracting agreement? I mean,
Nana, can you make it available to the people of Ghana?
Is it in substance?
I can give it to you.
Thank you.
You see,
I'll give it to you.
Let's be critical about this. It's good we've come to this point. Eyes have opened. Luckily, we may not have incurred that debt or that loss if all these revelations hadn't come. What I'm saying is that let's sit back. Come again.
Which debt? You're saying we may not have.
No. What is happening now? We have avoidable contract on hand. And you cannot tell me that at this stage, PDS is making profit for ECG. It cannot be confirmed.
Collections are up, though.
Collection can be up. But whether cost incurred in providing that service matches with whatever we are taking is a different thing. If forensic audit is put on the grounds now, you'll be surprised. You see, the red flags came. The red flags came. Immediately, PDS started complaining about their inability to get a bank guarantee. From the procurement side, it's a red flag. So you shouldn't have even sat back to roll out a concession agreement without verifying some of these things. So for me, I wasn't surprised. What I'm saying is that mistakes have been made. We have the right. Thank God the government is working in the interest of the best interest of its citizenry. The advice I will give is that let's sit back. Let's go through a proper pre-qualification. Let's get everything right first time, so that as we take off, we are very sure that whoever we've given our access to are very right and are capable of running this concession.
Okay.
Otherwise, we will come back tomorrow and sing another song.
Now, Nana, you may want to use some of your time to react to something Mr. Hiable has said, but I do have a substantive question as well, so that you can manage your time between between the two. So my substantive question is this: the NDC have held a press conference yesterday. They are very unhappy with the everything that is happening, and they are calling for a number of things. Chief among them is the reconstitution of the board at MIDA and also at ECG. How's the Energy Ministry reacting to this call?
I'm not very sure that I got this understanding, so perhaps you can help me. Did they suggest any way forward?
Reconstitute the board. They're saying that the people on these boards are the cause of this problem.
But
they must not remain in...
They might want to avert themselves to the fact that it is a law that determines the constitution of the board. And so if we are to reconstitute this board, what other alternative will it be? Does it mean that we have to now redraft the bill and go through the parliamentary amendment processes, among others? These raises questions as to the understanding.
Why would you have to do that? Well, wouldn't you simply replace the individuals?
The law, you might want to avert your mind to the law. States clearly.
I know the law says that there must be representation from various...
So
yes.
And then what you realize is that you have the heads of these institutions, as is the norm, and then they have alternates. In case they are not able to make those meetings, they have alternates. So if we are to say that these individuals are still there, in any case, once they are the heads of these institutions, it is their thinking, it is their disposition that is most likely to be carried out onto the representation of this board as well. So
should government not be considering the question of whether these people should remain heads of institutions in light of this abysmal outcome?
We can have that discussion, but I do not believe that at this point, right now, where we are, you and I should be exerting our energies in that direction. What we want is a resolution of this matter as it is. Then, after it has been resolved, we can avert our minds to all of these things.
I'm sure government can walk and chew gum at the same time.
I agree with you, but looking at the complexity of the issues at play, I've also told you that, remember, some of the issues are not necessarily on the table now, but they will still come into effect as we play along. We might want to concentrate all our efforts in resolving these matters. What I also want to say is that it is fair game, in politics as usual, to want to make political capital out of some of these things. But I listened to bits and pieces of the press conference, and I did not see it as an effort to galvanize the entire country in making the right decisions. I saw it as a political party seeking to make political capital of what they think is the mess that has been created by their political opponent. It's fair game in politics, but national interest should override some of these things at certain points in time. I also would want to say that, Mr. Hable, I disagree with some of the statements that you made. For example, saying that this is evidence of the fact that some greedy persons wanted to take over certain things at certain point in time. I think that we need to shift from those individualistic positions to a central position. By and large, you have given your interpretation of the law. I've also stated that I think that maybe the law needs to be tested. What we all need to understand is that, bottom line, after transaction advisors, everybody had given the green light to go ahead and do this, the government of Ghana decided to carry out further due diligence tests, even though the green light had been given by all the various bodies constituted to ensure or to do all of these due diligence tests. Second,
is that accurate? The government of Ghana actually decided to hand over the assets to PDS. It was after that decision that the government of Ghana, if you are going to call ECG that,
government of Ghana could not have handed over the assets to ECG, to PDS, without the green light of the transaction advisor, who should have advised everybody that...
I get this. I'm just correcting the statement you made. You said that government of Ghana decided to do due diligence.
Further due diligence.
Further due diligence.
Those are my words, yes.
But I think you should clarify that first, government of Ghana decided to hand over the assets.
No.
It was after that that you decided to do further due diligence.
No. First of all, government of Ghana...
These are the facts.
Well, it depends on how you look at it, and this is what I'm saying to you. Again, Kojo, with the greatest of respect, the transaction, the handing over of the assets occurred with the approval of the transaction advisor who had done a due diligence check on the demand guarantee. That's a fact. That's a fact.
And if that was sufficient, government of Ghana would not have decided to do further due diligence.
If you read,
so clearly it was not sufficient.
If you read the letter that has been written by the finance minister, he said that the due diligence checks were done And remember, the IRC is an international body with credibility and all of that. After the due diligence was done, government of Ghana then approached the IRC and said, look, you said you've done your due diligence checks and everything. Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we have some of these necessary checks? The answers they brought to us were unsatisfactory. So we decided to probe further.
But at this point, you had already handed over the asset.
Because you see, you are engaging in a transaction that has a transaction advisor. It's you and I. Right? And this is a transaction advisor. We have both agreed that he is a transaction advisor because of his procurement expertise. So he comes and says, based on this transaction that you are doing, I have done my necessary checks and I think that what you are selling to me is credible, so go ahead and do the sale. We have gone ahead based on his expertise to do the sale. But I have decided that no, well, you said you have done it. Can you provide me with this detail, and which is the further due diligence checks that we have decided to do. Okay. And it is, if I may land, I beg you.
Yes,
it is upon these further due diligence checks that these errors came out. So first of all, the interest of Ghana was protected through these further due diligence checks. Second level was that after we noticed, we did not hesitate to suspend and carry on further investigations. Thirdly, we are now at this point where, despite the disagreement of the Millennium Challenge Corporation and our other partners, government is still saying that in the interest of the Republic of Ghana and its people, we have made a decision to terminate.
But there is a possibility that the contract will not be terminated.
Well, that's an inference that you are raising.
It's a question. I keep putting it to you as a question.
It's not a question.
It is.
No, it's not a question. I just want to state.
Possibility?
Well, I just want to state
that the PDS contract will not be terminated.
I just want to state that it's an inference you are making. However,
it's a question. I'm asking you a question. However, the fact that you don't want to answer it doesn't give you the right to recategorize my question as a statement. It's a question. Is there a possibility that the PDS contract will not be terminated?
If you allow me to land. However, what we need everybody also to understand is that all of these things are vestiges, evidence that government has always acted in the interests of the people of Ghana, and it will continue to act in the interests of the people of Ghana.
I'll give the final word to you, Mr. Hiable.
Kojo, thank you very much. Just to correct, you said I used the word greedy people and all those. Maybe what I wanted to use was unqualified firms to be part of it.
Okay.
By the end of the day, you're talking about the dissolution of the MIDA and the ECG boards. I read the write-up of the minister yesterday, and I felt so sad. Because you realize, when it comes to governance, the board is supposed to take decisions in the interest of this nation. MIDA, as the managers, couldn't even detect the fraudulent nature of this, or the alleged fraudulent nature of this guarantee. So you ask yourself, what have they been doing? And they will push these to the ECG to say that yes, it's confirmed. For the transaction advisors, I think draws professional incompetence. I don't know the sort of due diligence they did before they confirmed that. And for me, it is so sad. The whole system, the whole from PDS, from MIDA, from ECG, there are question marks. For me, a dissolution of the board alone is an understatement.
Well, government says let's not do that yet. Let's solve this problem before we solve that one. But I want to thank you both for your time with us. And it's not lost on me that as we talk about due diligence and all that, we forget the simple fact that somebody also made a decision that a bank guarantee should become an insurance guarantee. That is another conversation for another day. But thank you both very much for your time with us. Nana Damoah, of course, speaks for the Energy Ministry, and Mr. Basil Hiable is a procurement consultant. He's also the council chairman at the Ghana Institute of Procurement and Supply.